Call the Senate to order. Mr. Clerk, please read the roll.
Barnett, Barrett, Blackman, Blackwell, Blunt, Boyd, Branning, Bryan, Butler to 36, Butler to 38, Carter, Kaufman, Chazanall, Chisholm, DeBar, Delano, England, Fillingame, Frazier, Harkins, Hickman, Hill, Hobson, Horn, Jackson, Johnson, Jordan, Kirby, McCollum, McDaniel, McLendon, McMahon, Michelle, Moran, Norwood, Parker, Parks, Pope, Seymour, Simmons of the 12th, Simmons of the 13th, Sojourner, Spark, Suber, Tate, Thomas, Thompson, Turner, Ford, Whaley, Wiggins, Williams, Younger. Mr. President, a quorum is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Will the senators and the guests in the gallery please rise for the invocation to be given by Mr. Matt Lipscomb from Lake Cormorant, Mississippi, who is a guest of Senator Michael McClendon, who will then give the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Lipscomb.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. And it's wonderful to be with you in this beautiful place. And for no other reason, to have an opportunity to thank each of you for all that you do for people like me who love to call Mississippi home. Before I give my prayer, or as I give my prayer, I want you to know I was raised in the Methodist tradition, and that was founded by a fellow by the name of John Wesley. And he taught three things. And he said, at a moment's notice, we should be prepared to do any one of these three things at a moment's notice. We should be prepared to preach, we should be prepared to pray, and we should be prepared to die. Now, when Mike asked me to do this here today, you should be very thankful he did not ask me to preach. So what I am going to do is take advantage of this invitation to be with you here today and to pray. And as we do so, and with that permission, I'm going to ask that you join me as we now go to our Lord in prayer. Father God, as we come to you this morning, we are thankful and we recognize that you are not just the God of Mississippi, but that you are the Lord of everything that is, that everything that ever was, and everything that ever will be. We are also thankful, Lord, that we live in Mississippi, this wonderful state, in the 21st century, with all the health and the resources and the freedoms to experience its blessings and its people in the way that you have allowed us to do. And Father, we do recognize that with those blessings comes the responsibility of stewardship of everything that you've entrusted us with, whether we be elected officials or just thankful Mississippi citizens. And Father, I'm thankful for the men and women in this room, these senators that have invested a big part of their lives, Lord. Indeed, they have sacrificed years to make Mississippi a better place to live. And as the business of governance is exercised in this room today, I pray that you would give each of these men and women the gift of wisdom, and that you would give them respect for each other, and that you would give them a cooperative spirit, which I think is consistent with what you have taught us in your word. And Father, as we do government in this room today, I pray that the threat of discouragement as it may be presented would be offset by the remembrance that how much you love each and every person in this room. I pray that they would remember that. I pray that they would remember also that most of the people where they live, most of their friends and neighbors wanted them in these seats here today. In fact, championed them to be here today so that they could do what serve them as best as they possibly could. And I thank you for that. Father, as we go through today, we also are reminded that there are certain things that your word has told us that you may choose not to do except for the event of intercessory prayer. And so we lift up all these things that we've been praying, and we add them to the prayers of people everywhere that are praying for this room this day and indeed the days ahead. And as we go into the days ahead, we ask and pray that you would keep us ever watchful and just ever alert and alive to whatever it is that you're trying to teach us at that time, and then give us the strength and the conviction and desire to follow that will so that we may meet the plan that you have designed for each of us. And Father, we lift all these up in the name of our Lord and Savior. We lift it up in the name of Jesus, and everybody in the chamber said, amen.
Amen.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Lipscomb. Thank you, Senator McClendon. We'll now move to the reading of the journal. Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the journal.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the journal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next of petitions, message and petitions, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, there are none.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next, committee reports. Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Mr. President, I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the committee reports.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the committee reports. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Finally, to the reading of the titles of the bills and resolutions. I recognize Senator Polk.
Mr. President, I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the titles of the bills and resolutions.
Senator moves to dispense with the titles of the bills and the resolutions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you, Senator Polk. We now go to introduction of guests. Senator Jordan, you're recognized for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not for an introduction to introduce a bill out of order, please.
Oh, please proceed. Next, we'll go to Senator Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, today we're honored to have with us several hospital CEOs and administrators. They're in the gallery, and if they would, please stand and let their Senate make them welcome.
Senator Fillingane, you're recognized for announcement.
For an introduction, Mr. President, I would like the Senate to help me welcome Mr. Greg Gibbs in the West Gallery. He is the CEO of the Covington County and Simpson County Hospitals. Thank you for being with us, Greg.
Senator DeBar, you're recognized for announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. If everybody will help me welcome some friends of mine in the North Gallery, sitting up there in the front row. If they'll stand up, Margaret and Don Smith, and they're sitting next to some House member up there, Doug McLeod, I believe that it is. If y'all make them welcome for him, please.
Welcome. Introductions, Senator Chesnall. We're coming.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like for the group in the South Gallery to stand because they have a special place in my heart. This is the Leadership Montgomery County Youth, and this is the 14th year that this group has existed in our county, whereby they learn to use keys to the community to introduce them to local and state government. They are led today by Amy Ware and Anna Austin, who are very capable leaders, and these young people are 12th graders at Winona High School and Winona Christian School. Please make them welcome.
Senator Kaufman, you're recognized for announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the North and the West Gallery, we have some 7th and 8th grade students here with us today from Pleasant Hills Mennonite School. These students are representing Smith County and Simpson County. So on behalf of Senator Fillingane and myself, if they'll please stand, and let's welcome them to their state Senate.
Thank you. Senator Horn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, for an announcement.
Please proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, on this morning, at the invitation of the institutions of higher learning, Senator David Jordan appeared before that august body to receive the Karen Cummins Community Service Award in observance of Black History Month. It cited Senator Jordan's work as a civil rights leader who's worked tirelessly to increase Black voter registration and participation. In particular, he led a legal battle to change the form of government in Greenwood so African Americans can be elected to serve in the city council, as well as his being instrumental in the legal battle that led to the formation of a Black majority 2nd Congressional District. It talks further about his community service, and I will not try to read the whole thing, but I would like to share with the body that the institutions of higher learning resolved to take immense pride in honoring the Honorable David Jordan for his tireless efforts and commitment to fostering inclusivity, strengthening our communities, and improving race relations for all the citizens of the state of Mississippi. I think we ought to give Senator Jordan a round of applause.
Well deserved, Senator Jordan. Senator McMahon, you're recognized for announcement.
Yes, over the smoker's table, my brother Jeremy McMahon is here today, and I ask that the Senate make him welcome.
Senator McClendon, you're recognized for announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also at the smoker's table, Mr. Matt Lipscomb's better half, who is here this week at the Dixie National Rodeo with the Quarter Horse Division, Miss Sandy Lipscomb. Please give her a warm welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for the prayer today, and thank you for being here. Senator Hill, you're recognized for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Brian Maxey may still be here in the West Gallery. He's not only my hospital administrator, but he's my friend. So y'all make Brian welcome. Thank you.
Senator Hickman, you're recognized for an introduction.
Introduction, Mr. President. We have joining with us in the North Gallery one of my good friends and fraternity brother, Dr. Felton Cortez Moss. Would you stand? And the Senate, please make him welcome at this time. He's a native Mississippian joining us all the way from D.C. this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hickman. Senator Branning, you're recognized for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the West Gallery, we have with us today Mr. Lee McCall. If Mr. McCall would stand so that we can see him. He is the administrator for Neshoba County General Hospital, does a fantastic job for our community. We appreciate you, Lee. Thank you for being here.
Senator Hobson, you're recognized for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would feel guilty saying at the smoker's table when I introduced the doctor of the day, so I think I'll just say to my right is our doctor of the day, our good friend, Dr. Carlos Latorre, and most of you know he's the president of the Academy of Family Physicians, and he's brought with him today Janice Cockrell, who's also a constituent of mine, and she's a nurse here, and she's following Dr. Latorre today, so I'd like the Senate to make them welcome this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. It's good to see you again. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Senator Chisholm, you're recognized for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the South Gallery, help me make welcome Ms. Lauren Smith, the leader of Prime. Thank you.
Okay, any other introductions? Okay, Senator Blunt, you're recognized. While you're doing that, would you read the bill, please, Mr. Clerk, from
A
Senator
concurrent resolution commending and congratulating Dia Chawla of Pillow Academy in Greenwood as the second Mississippi high school student to win the National High School Heisman Trophy, given to the top high school student athlete in the United States of America.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Blunt, we're ready for you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request floor privileges for Mr. Steve Pickett and Mr. Nehemiah Flowers, former members of the Mississippi State Parole Board.
Seeing no objection, privileges are granted. Will the Sergeant at Arms please escort our guests to the chamber? Senator Blunt, you're going to be recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our parole board is going to have to move forward without two distinguished public servants, Steve Pickett and Nehemiah Flowers. Mr. Pickett, who served as chairman, recently retired after 10 years. I've been friends with Steve for almost 30 years now and have tremendous respect for him, not only in his work on the parole board, but just as someone who has more walking around sense than just about anybody I know. And we're going to miss him very much at the parole board. Also retiring is Mr. Nehemiah Flowers, who grew up here in the Midtown community of Jackson, went on to become the first African-American appointed to serve as U.S. Marshal for the state of Mississippi, and served for 7 years on the parole board. I would invite Vice Chairman Sparks, Chairman Barnett, and any other member of the Senate who would like to come up here to stand with these two gentlemen to please do so. The parole board has made a lot of progress, and I think all of us have acted in a bipartisan way the last few years to make progress in criminal justice reform. both here in the legislature, but also through the actions of the parole board. And I think a lot of that credit goes to these two men. We will have resolutions forthcoming for both of them, and you'll have the opportunity to vote on that and to read that. But we wanted to do this here today in what I thought was a slow week. And so at this time, Mr. President, I would ask you please to recognize Mr. Flowers and then Mr. Pickett to briefly address the State Senate.
Nehemiah Flowers, it's my pleasure and honor to have you address the Mississippi Senate. Mr. Flowers, you go first.
Good morning. How is everyone?
Good.
First of all, I want to say thank you very much for the recognition. I've had the opportunity to travel around this country, and wherever I've been, people have always asked me, why are you going back to Mississippi? And my retort has always, that's my home. And it's always turned out to be something good for me. And I want to thank you for that. It always has been my home, and something good has always happened. Thank you very much for that.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor. We appreciate the recognition. We have together over the last decade made over 50,000 parole decisions. Nehemiah is a great fellow to work with, and it's just been the honor of my life to serve with him to make those decisions. Yesterday, the inmate count was 16,558. Thanks to y'all's leadership and courageous reform efforts, things are looking up in criminal justice reform in this state, and I thank you, and again, I thank you for this honor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the Senate.
Thank you, Steve Pickett. We appreciate you. Thank you, Nehemiah, both of y'all. Years of service, and very, very appreciative of both of you. One moment, please. Okay, we'll move to the calendar, and we'll start with item number 1. Chairman Hobson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, before I take up any items on the calendar, I'd like to ask that staff pass out the budget sheets for the initial action on the Senate proposals, and so all the members can have an opportunity to look at the budget for this year. And what I think I'll do after that is kind of give an overview of where we are in the budget process, and then my expectation is to take up most of the items in block, and then I will take a few up individually that may need some additional discussion. If you'll see on your budget sheets as you get them, the total amount on the budget for 23 will be $6,566,138,033. Of that amount, $6,004,278,323 is general funds. The other portion of the budget is comprised of the additional funds, EEF, education enhancement funds, tobacco funds, healthcare expendable funds, and some capital expense funds. There's one project, that $4.9 million project that you see that JLBC put into mental health for a forensics unit that was needed. That's something that has come to the attention of the legislature as it relates to the mental health lawsuit. At some point later today, we get to the mental health budget. I'm going to call on Senator Hill, who's the subcommittee chair, to explain their budget. Let me tell you what's in every bill, except for one, is a reverse repealer. Obviously, we're not at the point of knowing what our final budget numbers are going to be, so we have to pass this, send it to the House. My expectation is they're going to do the same. They'll pass their half of the budget, send it to us, and put a reverse repealer in it. And in the last week or two of the session, we'll certainly be working off what are the final numbers for revenue expectations and what we think we need to put in the budget overall. There are two major changes off of LBR that you'll see in the budget sheet. One is the teacher pay raise that we've passed. That's roughly $170 million this year, and it'll be about $45 million next year. So this year's budget off of LBR will be $170,198,330. And also in every budget, you'll see that there's a health insurance increase. So every budget agency, we've taken what we expect the health insurance increases to be, and that will be funded out of our general funds. That's on top of LBR. So if you look at the percentage changes out to the side on your worksheet, you'll see that there's some small changes and increases, and that's what that is typically, except for the teacher pay raise that I mentioned. We've removed all the one-time funding from last year's budgets, so you'll see some things that have come out. However, there are some reappropriations. I'm not going to take the time to go back through reappropriations, but typically if we had a project that we put in last year and the agency has not been able to expend all the funds and won't be able to by the end of this fiscal year, we're going to reappropriate those funds so they can finish out that project. Also, in every bill will be updated VCP language. That's the variable compensation plan. So if you're in appropriations, you've heard this 2 or 3 times. I've talked about the SEC squared plan. I want you to know when we set up the budget, JLBC set up the budget to include every employee in the state. It was about $25 million of one-time funds. Every employee in the state, should it be at least at the minimum level as determined by SPB under the SEC squared plan. And for those that aren't keeping up with this, they've gone through and classified every level or every category of employee in the state, put them into a range where they can have, there's a minimum, medium, maximum level. Every employee will be at least at the minimum level at the state. Some that are above that are frozen at their pay level. They're not going to come down, but they can certainly go up. The agency directors can increase their pay up to 10%, but they are going to be capped at the maximum level within that agency. If they're above that, they will stay at that level until at some point in the future, as you would expect, inflation will drive the cost up for all employees, and they can then maybe get a raise if they're above the maximum level. The only agency I failed to mention that does not have a reverse repealer in it is the chiropractic board. They didn't want any changes. There was nothing new there, so we did not put a reverse repealer in that bill. So hopefully it can go to the House, they can pass it, and we send that one on to the governor. Also, Senator Polk will come up in a little bit and explain the ARP bills, those that are left for appropriations that we've not already passed. And out of those bills, I think we don't have any reverse repealers in those bills, Senator Polk. We're going to have this year a couple of new bills. We're going to have a separate GCRF, Gulf Coast Restoration Fund bill. And also, there's you'll see towards the end, we've got a Department of Tourism bill because we passed something on the Department of Tourism too. That's an overview of what we plan to do. As I said, I'm going to take up several bills, and I'll tell you the bills that I intend to take out of a block for individual discussion. So I'll give you the option. You can ask questions now, or you can wait until we get to those bills. But my plan is to discuss the IHL budget separately, Student Financial Aid, the Community and Junior College Board, Department of Corrections, Department of Public Safety, Military, Department of Revenue, Mental Health, MDA, GCRF, Department of Tourism, and then at the end I'll do the deficit bill at the end of this, which is number 54 on the calendar. So, Mr. President, at this time I'll either open it up to general questions or I will move to take up the remaining items in block unless there's a senator that wants to pull a particular bill for discussion, and we can discuss that individually.
Okay, question, Senator Hickman, for what purpose?
Introduction out of order at the appropriate time.
Please proceed.
Mr. President and the rest of the Senate, we have joining with us in the West Gallery the Mississippi Education Policy Fellowship and my good friend Becky Glover. If they would stand so they can be welcomed here to the Senate. Y'all please give them a hand and welcome them to the Senate.
Senator Parker, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Question, Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Hobson.
I yield.
Senator Parker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your explanation of that. It helped a whole bunch. Your comments on kind of because I'm not on appropriations, like the SEC squared method of looking at salaries and how that may affect things. Am I correct in hearing that based on those numbers that people within government agencies might be getting a raise based on the findings of that to put them in line with what is anticipated for their position?
That's correct. Anybody that's not at least at the minimum level as determined by SPB will get a raise, yes.
Okay, so just about every item on this calendar then would probably include some degree of a small pay raise for people, you know, who are deemed as that being necessary?
Well, it depends. You know, some agencies may have already been above that, and some agencies may not get any raises. We have some agencies that have very small pins. Actually, we may be getting away from the term pins now under the new proposal, but a head count, there will be some agencies that may only have 3 or 4 employees, and so they may all be above it and they may not get a pay raise. But generally speaking, you know, yes, there could be a lot of pay raises. In fact, like I said, the total number for all the pay raises just to get to minimum was $25 million roughly, give or take a little bit.
So if you were in this body and you were completely against a pay raise for anybody across the board other than law enforcement, your recourse on this would be to vote no on each and every one of these appropriation bills to ensure that nobody in this state gets a raise. Would that be a fair assessment?
That's correct, absolutely. You need to vote no if you don't think that anybody should get a pay raise up to the minimum level.
And that's not my opinion. I plan to vote for all of these, and thanks for your hard work on this.
Thank you, Senator Parker.
Thank you. Senator Bryan, you're recognized for what purpose, sir?
Question or two.
You yield, Senator Hobson?
I yield for Senator
Senator Bryan is recognized for a question.
I'm trying to get clear in my head the pay raise and the way the SEC squared, as I understand it, works. I thought that forever the State Personnel Board did studies and came up with salaries that were competitive with the private sector. And I think that was and may still be the variable pay plan. And I've heard the phrase fully funding the variable pay plan. I think last year, as I recollect, there was something like a 3% cap, and I've heard you mention a 10% cap. I'm sorry if you've explained this before, but would you just explain how the pay raise that's in all of these bills works and how that's determined?
Sure, I'll do the best I can. The 3% that you referenced is what we passed last year that became effective January the 1st. So state employees should have gotten a 3% pay raise effective January 1. There are some employees that even with that pay raise, I suppose, that were not able to get up what is the minimum level of this SPB, SEC squared classification. And here's the best way I can explain that. If you're a programmer, a level 2 programmer at ITS, let's say, and they've determined that your minimum salary is $40,000 and the maximum salary you should make is $50,000. If your pay before this plan was $37,000, we've included already built into the budget through JLBC a $3,000 pay raise for you to get to $40,000. Agency directors will still have some flexibility. Of course, we plan on budgeting the amount of money they need to get everybody to either the minimum level or the level which they are. However, the shell game that had been played by some agency directors years ago was don't fill pins, use the extra money, put it into salaries, and give sometimes exorbitant raises to certain employees. They will be capped without going through SPB with an explanation at a 10% raise for that employee. So that $40,000, let's say they're already at $40,000, they could actually give them a 10% raise up to $44,000 if they have the funds to do it. And then they would have to go to SPB. Certainly at some point they're going to reach that $50,000 where they can't go any higher. They're stuck there unless with inflation and other changes the pay for that classification moves. One of the other things that it does in the program, it's going to prevent another agency from coming over and saying, I want that programmer level 2 and I'll pay them $55,000. Well, they can't do it because they're going to fall within a classification that has been set up across the board for all state agencies. If you're a programmer level 2 with 10 to 15 years experience, here's your pay range. And any agency can get you within that pay range, but they can't get you above that pay range. So we will stop. I'm not going to say we stop agencies from trying to get other employees, but they can't do what has been done in the past to take, one agency that might need one programmer can pay that one programmer a lot more money than an agency like ITS that has, 10, 15, 40 programmers, and they can't pay them all at that higher wage within that agency. Is that helpful?
It's helpful. Let me see if I understand this. I am an employee earning $37,000. The range is 40 to 50. So I will get a pay raise to 40. And the agency head has the authority to give me an additional 10%, or how does that work?
Yes, 10%, if they've got the funds to do it.
So I could go hypothetically from 37 to 44.
Well, if you've bumped up under this pay plan to 40, starting this year, that person probably could. If we got them up to 40, which is the minimum, and they give them a 10% raise, that person probably could.
Yeah, I realize this is a far from typical and unusual example, and maybe more theoretical than real. One of the things I'm concerned about are the pay scales for engineers at the Highway Department, and I think they make a pretty good argument that we're just not competitive with our salaries. I don't think you've mentioned that budget, but what are the plans to deal with that particular issue?
You know, Senator, it's one of the things that's been really nice for me with the new plan is that I've been hearing for years, and more anecdotal than anything else, that my such and such aren't getting paid enough. This group's not getting paid enough. That group's not getting paid enough. We're going to be able to tell now if they're getting paid enough. And I've heard a couple of agencies already say to me, well, I thought they were going to get paid more. And I said, well, you know, I can't help it because they've analyzed other states. They've analyzed the private sector. Of course, they're, you know, working off a number on the private sector. It's not the same or even comparison, but they've said that person's going to get $40,000. Even though you thought they should have gotten $55,000, that's not what they qualify for. So we won't have to, we're still going to hear it. I shouldn't say we won't have to listen, but we can at least respond by saying, well, that's what the market and SPB is determined under SEC squared. And they're more equipped, I think, to handle what the pay range ought to be than we are, because I think we get more anecdotal information. They're over there studying this stuff on a regular basis.
Your faith in the personnel board is so charming.
I'm glad you think I'm charming.
I just referred to that faith.
I'm glad you think my faith is charming.
Faith was the noun that was.
I'm glad you think my faith is charming.
Again, I don't know what the numbers look like, and I'm not really competent to say how much somebody should get paid. But if I observe year after year my good employees leaving and going to the private sector, and I'm an agency head, that sure looks to me like that's better evidence of what's going on than the studies are.
Well, if they're going for more money, SPB is supposed to be evaluating this regularly, and they ought to be able to determine that all these employees are leaving. You know, let's just use the highway department as the DOT as an example. If all of their road people are leaving a $40,000 job and going to get 60 doing the same kind of work in the private sector, that's surely going to adjust the scale for that type of employee. And you know, Central, let me add one thing to this. I've talked with Kelly Hardwick on a number of occasions, and some of his staff members. I think we all think, and the Senate and the full legislature and everybody should think, there may be some glitches in this system. This is brand new, and I have the expectation that we're going to find out a few things need to be tweaked next year, maybe even for a few years until we get this solidified. But we're stepping into an area I think in the long run it's going to be very helpful for us, so we don't make bad decisions on what employees or what money should be spent on employees. We've got a much better understanding and idea about what their market rate is to help us fund their budgets.
I don't know if the appropriation bills determine the number of employees or how that works, but what is this budget going to do about the number of state employees?
Overall, I couldn't tell you. Now, each budget will have the number of what has been called pins in it. There will be a head count, and one of the things, I'll add this, one of the things that I've talked to Kelly and his staff about, and we in Appropriations have talked about this too, that We're going to be monitoring carefully to make sure agencies don't try to inflate their head count to be able to get additional money in the salaries portion of their budget to be able to do, even though they can't do the ridiculous pay raises that once had been done, but do a bunch of raises. At some point, if they did it anyway, they're going to reach a cap. They can't go any higher. But so that's one protection. The other one is if we see that they're doing that to try to game the system a little bit, it's going to be real easy to spot. And you know, a warning to the agencies is if you're doing this to try to push all your employees up, we'll be able to catch it a lot easier next year than we would have in the past.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your working through that. I would just say that in listening to your explanation, there seems to be a real concern about employees being overpaid and agencies trying to pay their employees more and on and on. The difficulty is it's very easy to see the cost of a salary. That's a dollar amount. We know what that is. We can deal with it. What we don't see is the cost that happens when the really good employees, the key people throughout state government, just like any bureaucracy, are in fact super competent, and they're very much in demand. And when those people go, you incur a lot of other costs that we don't see quite as clearly as we see the cost of their salaries. And as Hanan Miller used to say, and my question is, don't you agree with me?
I don't know if I agree with all of it, but I do. You make some good points, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Horn, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Question.
Were you for a question, Senator?
I yield, yes.
Please proceed, Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hobson, as I look on line 27 on the summary that you handed out, the $170 million figure, I'm assuming that is for the teacher pay increase?
Correct. And there may be a little bit of health insurance increase that too, but the total teacher pay is actually $50,000 less than that. So about $50,000 or so is health insurance increase, and the remainder is the teacher pay raise.
Okay, thank you. And did I hear you say that it is anticipated we'll do another $45 million in next year's budget?
Under our
teacher?
Yes, under our Senate teacher pay raise plan, it'll be roughly.
Okay, and could you share with us what that will get our teachers to on average, and how we would stack up against the Southeastern average?
Well, I defer to Senator DeBar to give you a more complete explanation, but I think it would raise us much closer to the Southeastern average. I think, as I recall, one of the concerns we had, well, when you broke your teachers into groups of the new teachers, starting teachers, middle tiered or tenured teachers, and then our longer tenured teachers, we were a little behind on beginning teacher pay. We were well behind on middle tier teacher pay, and we were really good on tenured teacher, high tenured or long tenured teacher pay. Actually, Mississippi's near the top of the list on that. I don't think a lot of people recognize that, so I try to point it out every chance I get, is if you stay around and teach in Mississippi for 25 or 30 years, you're up near the top of the Southeastern states. Now, the middle tier under Senator DeBar's proposal or the education proposal, they will get bumps every 5 years, so it's going to bump them up closer to that Southeastern average. And of course, there was an initial increase for starting teachers to get them close to the Southeastern average.
Okay,
and of course, the Southeastern average is always a moving target too.
So out of the $170 million on average, what will the average teacher get in salary next year?
I'll defer to Senator Barr if he wants to come whisper to me up here or shoot me a number. I could tell you exactly, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. And you made a comment that says that the SEC squared will help us catch efforts by some employers to bump up the salaries of some employees. What about efforts to bump down salaries?
No, nobody will be bumped down.
Well, I've heard some complaints from employees at the support staff level, at the Department of Mental Health, more specifically out at Whitfield Hospital, that are telling me that their job classifications are being classified downward, and as a result, they don't qualify for a raise. Have you heard anything about that?
I tell you what's happened in the past, Senator, I think this may be what you're getting at. We've had some agencies that have falsely inflated the title of somebody. You've got somebody that's a programmer, let's say, and they're calling them a supervisor, and they supervise nobody, and they're giving them supervisor pay when they're not supervising anybody. That's the kind of stuff this will catch, because if their job does not include supervisory capacity, a supervisory capacity role, then they don't need to be paid at a supervisor level. Now, their pay would be frozen. They're going to fall in their classification. They're not going to have pay reduction, but they will be frozen at a level until whatever classification they're in catches up to the number where they are, and then they can be considered for a raise at that time. But it could be, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, could be the rest of their career, depending on how high they were getting paid for the work that they were doing.
Yeah, well, what I've heard is it's not about being given a supervisory title and not supervising anybody. It's you're part of the lower rung and support staff at the state hospital, and some of the employees there have had their jobs reclassified downward. So would you be willing to look into that and see what's going on there?
I do think I will look into it to make sure that there's nothing going on different than I think. But I do think some people's their jobs have been classified downward because they're not doing the job that a former director raised them up to. They just gave them a title so they could give them a pay increase, as opposed to giving them falling into their category.
Well, I'm being told it's a whole class of workers, and I'd appreciate it if we could take a look at it.
Yeah, I will check. Thank you, Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Horn. Senator Norwood, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Question, Mr. President.
Are you for a question, Senator Hobson?
I yield, Mr. President.
Senator Norwood, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Hobson, and thank you for your hard work on behalf of state employees. And I just want to ask, I think I heard some portions of a response, but I'd just like to ask, are there any circumstances, because what I've been advised that some agency heads are not giving their employees the pay raises that have been granted, heretofore, based on the minimum level of standards, more or less. Are there any circumstances beyond what you stated that agency head would have discretion not to give those individuals pay raises?
I have not heard that, first of all. Second, keep in mind that the 3% we passed last year, which just went into effect, raised the state employees 3% across the board. Now, what we're passing here today are the new language in the new SEC square. It's actually going into effect July 1. So that will be starting July 1, all the employees should be paid at the minimum level. We got a computation on what state employees were behind the minimum level based on their new classifications, and we have put that into the budget for each, or once we pass the budget for each agency to get them to that minimum level. So I can't, maybe what you're hearing is they're not at the minimum yet, and that could be accurate because the 3% may not have gotten some of them to the minimum level, but that just took effect last month. So that's probably, my guess is that's what you're hearing, Senator.
Well, I think some of, the $3,000.
Or 3%.
Well, 3%, they have not received that.
Okay, we'll check on that. I've not heard that before.
And so I'm saying that, I guess, what advice, what would they, because obviously it's a problem with the agency head, would they be able to get better information more or less from state personnel board to see?
I think so, but let me check on that. I hadn't heard that before, but I will. But state personnel board would be a place to go, I would assume. If they can't go to their agency head and ask them, I would say they could go to the personnel board. Okay. I'd need it before that's what I think There may be a different hierarchy that they need to follow within their agency, but I can check on that and let you know.
And I'll check and I'll get back with you if I get more information in particulars.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Simmons, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Question, Mr. President.
For you for a question, Senator Hobson.
Okay, I yield.
Senator Simmons, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chairman Hobson, for yielding, and thank you so much for all your work and your leadership regarding the budget. A lot of the questions that I had have been raised. I just want to admit that I didn't hear the items that you intend to set aside. And so at the appropriate time, when you make the motion, could you identify them by number?
I will.
Okay, and so thank you so much.
I will identify the ones that I intend to exclude from the block.
Yes.
And then, and I'm fine if the president's willing to ask if anybody wants to exclude anything else. I'm happy to exclude that too.
Okay, thank you, Senator Simmons. Senator Seymour, for what purpose do you seek recognition, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
For you for a question, Senator
I
Hobson.
yield.
Please proceed, Senator Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday in appropriation, Senate Bill 3055, dealing with the Attorney General's defrayed expenses. In you giving the explanation of the bill, you made reference to a deficit expenditure for Veterans Affairs. I've not found that in the bill.
I had a different, remember I said that my worksheet was off. I'm gonna exclude that bill. That's one of the ones I'm gonna discuss individually, if you don't mind, and wait, and I'll go through that bill in detail towards the end, if that's okay with you. I mean, I'm happy to try.
That's fine, but that ain't really, my real question is that what that additional appropriation was for the penalty of the Affordable Cares Act, as far as dealing with our subcontract labor in the state?
That was what I was about
Where do
to
you
discuss.
find that number for all the other agencies?
The other agencies are across, I've heard different stories from different agencies, so I don't know. I really haven't gotten a briefing on that. That's more just occasionally somebody mentions what they're trying to work on that issue, but I have not looked at in preparation for this, since nothing's in this budget on this. I have not looked at it, but before the end of the session, I'll certainly find out about it, and I expect that some agencies will probably be talking to us about whether they need a deficit or whether we put it in their next year's budget or whether they think they've got it worked out. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Seymour.
Senator Blunt, for what purpose you seek recognition, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
For you for a question, Senator Hobson.
I'll yield.
Senator Blunt, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, do I understand you to say that essentially what we have is LBR, which is roughly level funding from last year, plus the Senate's teacher pay raise plan, plus the cost of the increase in insurance? What is the total of that's the 179 roughly?
170 million, 198, 330 first year, and then next year will be, as I said, additional 45 million or so.
So where is the pay raise in
we did that at JLBC.
At LBR?
Yeah, so it's already built in.
Okay.
All right.
And so in the second chart here, the smaller chart, last year's general fund budget, I guess had, if you don't include ARPA funds, $375 million of one-time money, the capital expense funds, plus the Gulf Coast restoration funds, is that correct?
Right.
And so we're not using the one-time capital expense funds.
We pulled out.
Other than the 4.9.
Yeah, I explained this. The capital expense funds, that 4.9 million is for a mental health forensics unit that JLBC put in last minute before we set the budget, before we set the foundational budget. I do want you to keep in mind, everybody, that so LBR is, use the term level. I want to be real clear about that. It's roughly level, but it does exclude any one-time funds that we put in last year's budgets We took all those out, with the exception of the things I mentioned earlier. We got some capital expense funds we put into projects, sometimes general funds for certain expenditures that we just haven't been able to get to yet. So if the Department of pick one, let's say military had something that we put money in for them to build a new unit. Well, they haven't been able to spend all that money, so we reappropriated that in this budget.
And the Medicaid budget, which is one of the largest items in the budget, are we still getting that reduced match? So we're saving money, I imagine a good bit of money, by the federal government as a result of COVID, requiring a smaller match from the state, is that right?
Yeah, Medicaid has been down. Now, I'm going to pull Medicaid because it's not a big, thank you. Corbin reminded me, it's on my list of things to discuss, but it is coming from the House. So, but we're going to give them some authority to spend. It's not their budget, it's in the corrections or the deficit budget. And we're going to give them, pull down some federal funds for matching purposes. And it's a significant amount. It's like $400 million. But yeah, it's down. Medicaid budget's down from where you and I remember it a few years ago.
But isn't that primarily due to the fact that the federal government is requiring a smaller match from the state?
I would think so. I mean, I'd let Drew Snyder tell me exactly what all the reasons are, but I would think so. I think our enrollment is up in Medicaid, so I think the FMAP increase has got to be a big factor in that. Yes.
Yeah. We want to pat ourselves on the back, and I think Mr. Snyder's doing a good job, but that number is going down for the reason that the federal government's picking up more of the cost.
Yes. I think that's primarily the primary reason. There may be other reasons too, but I would say the FMAP increase is probably the biggest factor in that, for sure.
And so we're benefiting from a historically low state share on Medicaid. We have a very lean budget. The only thing that we're doing in the budget today is state employee pay raise, covering the cost of insurance, which I think we heard from Senator Michelle is still running in a deficit, but we're trying to meet that. And we're doing a teacher pay raise, and everything else is about the same.
Yep, everything else is LBR. Again, keep in mind when you say about the same, there were some funds pulled out before LBR. And I'm going to go over any additional things that are maybe unique going into LBR, but as far as from LBR forward, yes, that's it.
And so after that is, we do all that, we're about almost at a 3% annual increase. That's the last line.
I haven't done the percentage, but
it's 2.81.
2.81. Yep, that looks right.
Okay, great. That's what I need to know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
you, Senator Blunt. Other questions?
Mr. President.
Seeing none, you're recognized, Senator Hobson.
Okay, thank you. One other thing that I don't know if I mentioned at the outset that's in some of the budgets that we're covering is some prior year invoices. Some agencies, as we are prone, this is not unusual, but we get an invoice from 2020 that came in late or something like that. So we've given the agencies that have prior year invoices the ability to pay those invoices. So that's just one thing I wanted to make sure that you knew was in all the budgets to pay any prior year invoices. All right, if there are no other questions, Mr. President, my motion is going to be to take up all items on the appropriations calendar in block with the exceptions of items 1, 8, 10, 12, 13, 18, 23, 26, 47, 48, 49, and 54, and then all items 55 through 63 will not be included in that, because Senator Polk will explain those at the appropriate time.
We have a motion. Any questions?
And if
does anyone else
there's
want to
any
say-
items that anybody wants to pull, they can let us know.
Anyone want to set an item aside? Senator Norwood.
Mr. President, I would just ask if the chairman be allowed to repeat those again.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, you're recognized.
Items to be pulled that are not going to be in block are items 1, 8, 10, 12, 13, 18, 23, 26, 47, 48, 49, and then 54 through 63.
Okay, is there anyone who would like to exclude another item? Anyone?
If none,
Anyone? Senator Wiggins?
if none, I move they be taken up in block and the titles read on all the items that will be taken up in block.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Okay, Mr. Clerk, we got some reading to do there.
Senate Bill number 3003, Appropriation IHL Subsidiary Programs. Senate Bill number 3004, Appropriation IHL Alcorn State Agricultural Research, Extension and Land Grant Programs. Senate Bill number 3005, Appropriation IHL Mississippi State University Agricultural and Forest Experiment Station. Senate Bill number 3006, Appropriation IHL Mississippi State University Cooperative Extension Service. Senate Bill number 3007, Appropriation IHL Mississippi State University Forest and Wildlife Research Center. Senate Bill number 3008, Appropriation IHL Mississippi State University Veterinary Medicine College of. Senate Bill number 3010, Appropriation IHL University of Mississippi Medical Center. Senate Bill number 3012, Appropriation Community and Junior Colleges Board Support for Community and Junior Colleges. Senate Bill number 3015, Appropriation Agriculture and Commerce Department of. Senate Bill number 3016, Appropriation Fair and Coliseum Commission Livestock Shows. Senate Bill number 3017, Appropriation Animal Health Board of. Senate Bill number 3018, Appropriation Emergency Management Agency. Senate Bill number 3020, Appropriation Veterans Affairs Board and Homes. Senate Bill number 3021, Appropriation Ethics Commission. Senate Bill number 3022, Appropriation Judicial Performance Commission. Senate Bill number 3023, Appropriation Employment Security Department of. Senate Bill number 3025, Appropriation Tax Appeals Board. Senate Bill number 3026, Appropriation Workers' Compensation Commission. Senate Bill number 3028, Appropriation Transportation Department of State Aid Road Construction Office of. Senate Bill number 3029, Appropriation Tennessee Tom-Bigby Waterway Development Authority. Senate Bill number 3030, Appropriation Chiropractic Examiners Board of. Senate Bill number 3031, Appropriation Dental Examiners Board of. Senate Bill number 3032, Appropriation Funeral Services Board. Senate Bill number 3033, Appropriation Massage Therapy Board of. Senate Bill number 3034, Appropriation Pharmacy Board of. Senate Bill number 3035, Appropriation Counselors Board of Examiners for Licensed Professional. Senate Bill number 3036, Appropriation Veterinary Examiners Board of. Senate Bill number 3037, Appropriation Architecture Board of. Senate Bill number 3038, Appropriation Gaming Commission. Senate Bill number 3039, Appropriation Geologist Board of Registered Professional. Senate Bill number 3040, Appropriation Motor Vehicle Commission. Senate Bill number 3041, Appropriation Accountancy Board of Public. Senate Bill number 3042, Appropriation Contractors Board of. Senate Bill number 3043, Appropriation Audit Department of. Senate Bill number 3044, Appropriation Banking and Consumer Finance Department of. Senate Bill number 3045, Appropriation Finance and Administration Department of. Senate Bill number 3046, Appropriation Governor's Office and Mansion. Senate Bill number 3047, Appropriation Information Technology Services Department of. Senate Bill number 3051, Appropriation Personnel Board. Senate Bill number 3052, Appropriation Secretary of State. Senate Bill number 3053, Appropriation Treasurer's Office. Senate Bill number 3054, Appropriation Debt Service General Obligation.
Okay, Senator Hobson, we're back to you.
My motion is adoption by use of the morning roll call. Oh, usual motion, I'm sorry.
That's the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Now,
The ayes have it, Senator.
my motion is adoption by use of the morning roll call.
Adoption by use of the morning roll call. Does anyone object to the procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no. McDaniel, no. Sojourner, no. Chisholm, no. Anyone else? Senator Harkins, for what purpose you seek recognition?
To the vote.
Please proceed.
On one item, I needed to be voted present on the workers' compensation bill.
20, is that 25? Item 25, Mr. Clerk, vote present, Senator Harkins. We have 3 noes. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Norwood,
Introduction out of order at the appropriate time, Mr. President.
okay, 1 second, let's finish the vote here. Anyone, no one object to the procedure, the bill passes in bank. Okay, Senator Norwood, you're good. Good to go on introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this morning we have with us in the North and the West Gallery, People's Middle School, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and their chaperone, Melvin Jackson, Melissa Barksdale, and Marquise Bailey. And if they would stand, and a Senate would make them feel welcome.
Welcome to your Senate. Okay, Senator, I think we'll go back to number 1 on the calendar.
Yes, ask that we go to that item, suspend the rules for immediate consideration of item number 1.
Item number 1, please read the title, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill number 3002, appropriation IHL, general support.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the IHL General Support Bill. Total funding for the Senate action would be $1,250,231,982, of which $301,607,711 is general funds. I pulled this bill to recognize that this was last year was the last year of the ARPA funding that has fallen out of the budget this year, and that's the only significant change. There are some updates on the amounts that the 3 HBCUs are getting on funds they have left over, but that's the presentation of the bill. I'll be happy to yield for questions.
Questions on the bill? Item 1, questions on the bill. Senator Blunt, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Question.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, I believe that staff at our IHL institutions are not covered by the Personnel Board, and so they would not be part of any raise, and any raise that staff, either faculty or staff would need to get would be just they have that authority under this existing budget, which is increased by 0.3% over LBR.
That's correct. We gave them a raise last year, gave a 1% raise to, we gave a 1% raise, just to remind you, the value of a 1% raise for each institution. We did leave it up, as we've done in the past, for the institutional executive officers to determine which employees might get raises, which may not get raises, up to any employee getting no more than 5% raise.
And did we do the same? I'll just go ahead and ask it now for the one that's coming up. Is the same policy going to be in place for community colleges? And did we do that with them too? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Senator Parker, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Question, Mr. President.
You, Senator Hobson. Senator Parker is recognized.
Thank you. I think Senator Blunt cleared up some of my questions there. So most of these bills we've already taken up today. In your explanation before, you kind of said we've kind of put some of these raises in place that we voted on last year. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct. So they have had a raise. They've had a raise this current fiscal year.
So even if we voted against every one of these appropriation bills on this calendar, if we voted for any of those bills last year, we voted for a raise. Would that be a correct statement?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Horn, for what purpose, sir?
Question.
You for a question, Senator Hobson.
I yield.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hobson, in the wake of the demise of the ARPA funding, you mentioned that there was some changes in the funding for the HBCUs. Can you delineate that a little bit?
Well, the ARPA, this is the last year, the current fiscal year is the last year of the ARPA funding, and there had been a step down over, I think it was 7 years of $20 million per year, and then it went down to 13.3 or 13.5 for 6 years, and then I think it was, if I remember correctly, Senator, 5 years, it went down to 6.7 million total of ARPA funding. There is still an ARPA endowment interest fund that has some money in it that the HBCUs will get, but that's all that's left. There's no additional funds coming straight out of the general fund that's going into the ARPA program.
And are you aware that there was a commitment made by the institutions of higher learning for raising about $35 million into a trust fund that IHL would manage, and that there's only $1 million that's been raised out of that?
Yeah, I thought it was $20 million that they had set up to encourage to raise for the HBCUs, and I think $1 million. I'm not saying it to pat my alma mater on the back. I think Ole Miss put $1 million into it, and I think that's the only funds that have ever been put into it.
Under the leadership of former Chancellor Kayak, they put up $1 million, but the commitment was for $35 million. And that 35, we're nowhere close to that.
Senator, I need to look at that language because I haven't seen, when you say commitment, I don't know if that was the exact term. I thought it was a fundraising effort to set up a trust fund, the way I recall it, but I haven't looked at that in a number of years.
But you mentioned that there was some delineation of funds for HBCUs that may have changed. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, just looking at the bill, and I think it was just the breakdown of the remaining amounts that would go to prior year appropriations. I think Jackson State gets 1.165 million and change. Alcorn only has $3,275 left over, and Valley gets $446,931. Also, it appears that out of the interest, fund, there's a breakdown, but I think this is just the amounts that if the funds, whatever funds are available out of that Alcorn gets $254,700, Jackson State gets $390,600, and Valley gets $254,700.
And would you agree with me that there still is a disparity between the funding for HBCUs compared to the majority institutions?
I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, I think that, of course, we know that we give the funding to IHL largely, with the exception of those things that we've done for AIRS. I mean, I know since I've been dealing with universities and colleges budget, and now full appropriations budget, which now has been a lot of years, there are a lot of years that we put extra money above and beyond the AIRS program in those years. I can't tell you how many years. I know it's been millions of dollars above that. I know, there's been, of course, this was not the state. I mean, I know this past year through the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds and ARPA, all the universities, the HBCUs got, I think, $80 million between the three HBCUs in Mississippi. There was a significant amount of money went, I think the other institutions got a little bit of money. Actually, I want to say that it was 80 million something total, and I think the HBCUs got about 78 million of it for the funding. But and look, I'm not saying that they're part of the AIRS program was the disparity prior to that time, but I think that's what AIRS was designed to do, was to correct that disparity.
Well, would you agree with me that as we have attempted to correct those disparities using state funds, that the other institutions have likewise gotten additional state funds, and that the gap, if anything, may have widened?
I would not agree with that. Well, I mean, I'm not saying it, look, I would not agree. I just know, having dealt with the budget, I mean, some of our institutions have gotten very little outside of the IHL formula, and some have gotten more. I mean, some have gotten, so it's hard to say. I mean, it depends on what university you're comparing it to, Senator, because I mean, some have gotten big chunks and some have gotten very little, and some of it's been based on enrollment and other factors, and some of it's been based on needs of facilities, things we've done on a kind of a ad hoc basis from year to year.
Well, I think it might be interesting for us to have Elbow do an analysis of the funding cycle for our institutions for higher learning over the last, say, 20 years. Would you support such an effort?
Yeah, Senator, I know since I've been doing this, I hope that I've been instrumental in making sure that the HBCUs have gotten funds for much-needed projects, and some other institutions too, but I think I've been, I think I've looked at all those items, and others have looked at those items where there are needs. I mean, I could give you a list of things that have happened over the years, but LBO can look at it, that'd be great. I don't care who looks at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Bryan, for what purpose, sir?
A question.
Were you, Senator? Senator Bryan, you're recognized.
I think I heard some reference to the Ayers case as being an attempt to address disparities in funding for various institutions. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
You are familiar with the Supreme Court decision in that case, which specifically said the constitutional violation was that the state was operating racially identifiable institutions and that they had not desegregated higher education. And the Supreme Court said if the effort is to get additional funds for certain institutions, we reject that. Separate institutions are unconstitutional no matter how well funded they are. You do remember that passage in the Supreme Court?
I don't independently, but I trust you. You were probably here in the legislature when that decision was handed down.
I was. I was also here when the settlement was reached in the trial court. And you do understand that the settlement in the trial court had no connection at all to the United States Supreme Court decision. And indeed, if a law student had offered that as a remedy on an exam, he or she would have been flunked out of law school. You remember all that?
I don't remember all that.
Painfully.
Thank you, Senator Bryan.
Senator Jordan, for what purpose?
I have a question, Mr. President.
Senator Jordan, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, how will the HBCUs be made whole as the case called for when the Ayers case was filed?
Well, Senator, again, I don't remember all the details of the Ayers holding, but I know the decision included the funding formula that we've been following for the last 20 years or so, and it was my understanding that was the intent of that formula to pay the HBCUs in those many years and those amounts to take care of that.
But the funding has run out, as you pretty well indicated, and the schools are still not made whole. There are dormitories at Valley State that needs repairing. You get it given some resources, but it's not enough. It's just like water put out a fire. It's okay, but you got to have enough of it. They're not getting enough resources to be made whole. Yep. And I thought maybe the plan would work with them until that is done. I know you've done all you could do under the circumstances, but these are state institutions, and they should, whether you want to go out of any of the 5 or 6 that we have, all of them ought to be prepared in order to give a wholesome education, certainly a bachelor degree, and some are not because they don't have the resources.
So, yeah,
we're getting some, but it's
sure.
Not enough.
Sure. Well, I'm, Senator, I know that I've spoken with all 3 IEOs, Valley, Alcorn, and Jackson State. I've met with a couple of them on a couple of occasions to go through some of the needs they've got. Of course, I've met with other institutional heads, probably not as much as I've met with the HBCU heads. I do think some of them are looking at I mentioned the $78 million. I think some of them are looking to see what qualifies. There may be a lot of water and sewer projects. I know Valley and Alcorn have had significant water and sewer projects. No question Jackson State has had problems through the city water. So I'm hopeful that a lot of those funds can be utilized to help there. And then we're looking at other projects too, which again, this is the first rung of the process on the budget. We're looking at other projects too. And traditionally, I think almost every year, with the exception of maybe 2 since I've been here, we've had either bond projects for R&R at our universities and/or capital expenditures on projects to help with the kind of projects you're talking about. If we got I know at Valley years ago, they had a problem with the shower systems and the water systems in one of the dorms. I think all that's been corrected. I mean, there may be some other problems. I know Alcorn had the main water line was getting clogged up due to calcium overload, and that project's been underway or maybe completed by now. But anyway, I'm aware of some of the needs, and we're certainly going to be looking at those as the session continues.
You're prepared to give any assurance that Valley will continue, and those that in need, HBCUs will be continue to get enough resources to make those changes and put them up to standards where they should be. It's kind of embarrassing that you have HBCUs that are not measuring up out of the commitments that were made 30 years ago under the Harris case. We haven't been made whole as yet. So we must continue to work on that project until we are made whole, so that a person wants to go out any of the university, they all would give the best. So it is disappointing that the Harris money has run out, but it hasn't done. So we need more help, because it hadn't made us whole as far as the HBCUs, and that has been stated many times, and Senator Horn just stated.
Well, for one, I think you know my track record, Senator Jordan.
I appreciate it. Yes, sir. That's why
I for one, will continue to look at the problems that may exist and what we can do at the state level. I recognize there are state institutions, all 8 of them, and I'm going to continue to look at the problems, as are all of you too, what we can do to make sure that we've got good, safe places for our students to go to college and learn and become future leaders in our state.
Yes, sir. But I probably look at you as a doctor. Doctor always see the sickest patient first, doesn't he? So we need to take care of that. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator Jordan.
Okay, other questions? Other questions?
If none,
All right, we're ready on your motion.
Adoption, Senate Bill 3002 by use of the morning roll call.
More call has been requested. Anyone object to procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no? McDaniel, no. Anyone else? Seymour, no. Anyone else? Present? Seeing none, the bill passes with the no vote recorded. I think we go to number 8, which is the next one on the calendar.
Go to that item, have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3009, appropriation IHL, student financial aid.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The total amount of funding in our proposed Senate action on student financial aid is $49,719,681. I pulled this bill aside to let you know that in JLBC, we included $1.3 million of general fund money to go to the William Winter Loan Program. If no questions, I move adoption by use of the morning roll call.
Okay, questions on the bill? Questions on the bill? Seeing none, Chairman's move for adoption by use of the morning roll call. Anyone object to the procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no? McDaniel, no. Sojourner, no. Anyone else? Anyone else? 2 no votes, the bill passes.
Thank
We'll go
you,
to
Mr.
item 10, Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask the title be read on 3011.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3011, appropriation, community and junior colleges board, administrative expenses.
This is the usual motion, please.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The reason I pulled this bill is to let you know that there was a change of moving the funds for the early childhood academies and preschool development birth. We moved them out of this budget and put them into the Board of Health budget. It's nothing, it's just making sure you are aware that these funds will not be housed at community colleges. They will be with the Department of Health. If no questions, I'm sorry, the total amount of funding is $101,008,965, of which the general funds is $5,954,590.
Questions on the bill?
Thank you. Sorry, Corbin corrected me. Human Services, not Department of Health, Department of Human Services.
Questions on the bill?
If
Seeing
none,
none,
I move
we're ready for your
adoption
motion.
by use of the morning roll call.
After use of morning roll call been requested, all in favor? I'm sorry, anyone
Aye.
object to the procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no? Any no? Seeing none, the bill passes by use of the morning roll call. We go to number 12, Senator.
I ask that the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3013, Appropriation, Corrections Department of.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator.
Mr. President, I ask you to recognize Senator Wiggins to explain the bill.
Senator is recognized. Senator Wiggins is recognized to explain the bill on number 12, corrections.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. To be brief and not to repeat what the chairman has said, we're doing LBR with increase for health insurance for the employees. The total Senate action is $341,922,815. And what I want to note particularly in the bill in Section 3 is line items to increase funding for Marshall County and Walnut Grove. Marshall County, $8,674,362. Walnut Grove, $6,730,807. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the bill? Questions?
If not, move passage on the morning roll call, Mr. President.
Use of morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to procedure? Anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? No? Present? Seeing none, the bill passes. Thank you, Senator Wiggins. We go to item 13.
Ask that we go to that and have the title read, please.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3014, Appropriation, Public Safety Department of.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Hobson.
Thank you. Mr. President, I ask that you recognize Senator Wiggins to explain the bill.
Senator Wiggins, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. Couple things on the numbers. The biggest thing I want to note to the body on this is that for those that don't recall, let me put it this way, we have transferred or created within DPS the Commercial Transportation Enforcement Division, and have transferred that from NDOT to DPS. And there was what we did was we took funding from last year, and so what you're going to hear is the LBR minus that funding that's being addressed. To be more specific on that, under that program, that enforcement fund collects an average of $5 million. That's been written in. The remaining funds will be appropriated during conference. And on the numbers, the total Senate action is $210,693,118. I will state that the LBR was $221,744,472, and the Senate action, what that does is that represents that reduction that I just mentioned of around $11 million, but it also does have the health insurance increases into that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the bill? Seeing none, we're ready for your motion, Senator.
Move passage on the morning roll call, Mr. President.
Morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no? No? Present. Seeing none, the bill passes. We are to the second page,
Thank you,
and
Mr.
we go to
President.
item 18, Senator Hobson.
I would ask that the title be read on item 18.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3019, Appropriation, Military Department.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Total action on the military department is $148,568,228, of which the general funds is $7,760,591. One thing we did differently in this budget is we allowed them to use where most agencies or capital expense funds fall out. We're going to allow them to continue to use those funds and transfer them to a special fund a special fund so they can get some federal fund match on their work that they're doing within the military department. I'll yield for questions.
Questions on the bill? Senator Bryan, you recognize?
Or question?
Will you recognize for a question? Senator Hobson, will you
I'll
yield?
Yes, sir.
You mean the military department wants capital funds to build things?
We gave them some capital expense funds last year. We're just allowing them to keep them in a special fund for a federal match on the money. Most of their budget is federal funds anyway, so this is going to allow them to keep some funds on some areas that they need to fix up in the military department. I think if I remember from last year, I think they've got some of their units, armories that need to be repaired and a few other things.
Well, they had a perfectly good armory in Nettleton, and they went off and left it and abandoned the armory. Have they explained to the committee why they closed the armory in Nettleton only to turn around and say they need to build more stuff? Have they said anything about reopening the armory at Nettleton? Have they apologized for that?
I don't recall them saying that, but I'm sure that General Boyles would be happy to meet with you and explain his rationale as to why they did that.
You used the word happy.
He will come meet with you, I feel certain.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, Senator, ready for your motion.
I move adoption by use of morning roll call.
More roll calls for questioning or object to the procedure? Voted is no. Present. Not voting. Not voting, Senator DeBar. Or Colonel DeBar. Anyone else? Okay, bill passes. We're on 23, Senator Hobson. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that we have the title read on 3024.
Please read the title, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill number 3024, Appropriation, Revenue Department.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Total action on DOR is $63,462,276, of which $42,759,427 is general funds. I pulled this bill for a couple of reasons. One is we needed to have some conforming language for their enforcement division. We've also put in new performance measures. We've got right now performance measures that are at zero and funding at zero on the medical cannabis program, because we're going to have to obviously fund that. And we did, if you'll recall, earlier in the session, we did a deficit appropriation to get them started, and they're going to have ongoing costs. So we're going to end up seeing this one again with better numbers on what it's going to cost for them to run the medical cannabis program in Mississippi. And that's the other changes I think I mentioned are just the same changes we've had in other agencies. Any questions? I'll yield for them now.
Questions? Any questions? Seeing none, Senator Bryan, do you have a question?
Yes.
Will you yield, Senator?
I'll yield.
Senator Bryan, you're recognized.
Does this contain the actual dollars for the homestead exemption reimbursement, or is it just money to operate the program?
No, the money, the homestead portion is $90,600,000.
It sounds like the money they're sending to the counties, not the money they're using to operate.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood your question.
It's not just to employ individuals to mechanically run the program. This is the actual money they're sending to the counties.
Yes.
Okay. My understanding is that we continue to failed to fully reimburse the counties for what they call their homestead exemption laws. And I just wondered if there'd been any discussions about trying to fill that gap and making it a practice.
This 90 million number is fully funded. That discussion, we had that discussion at JLBC. So, yes, in fact, last year, if you might see on your sheet, it was 79 million. It's 90 million 600 now. So that was one of the topics that we discussed and agreed to go ahead and fund for LBR, was all the funds that are requested for homestead exemption.
Once again, I find myself very appreciative of the work of the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Senator Bryan.
Thank you. Ready for your motion, sir?
I move adoption by use of one roll call.
Some more roll call's been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Wish to be, of course, voting no? Present? Seeing none, the bill passes by, I'm sorry, Sojourner? No, I'm sorry. No on McDaniel. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none? Bill passes. We go to 26 on the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask the title be read as Senate Bill 3027.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3027, appropriation, mental health, Department of.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that you recognize Senator Hill to explain the measure.
Senator Hill, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Department of Mental Health's appropriation, the Senate action is $556,416 over LBR. The main points of the mental health bill and the changes that we have, health insurance increase was in the amount of $710,977. There was $4.9 million set aside for the funding a forensic unit at the state hospital. That was a major consideration that needed to be done. Also, in update from $20,100 to from $20,100,000 to $23,329,000 for the following items: adult mental health community services, and to continue the increase that we put in last year for the community-based waivers, and to update the number of PAC teams in the state. And those are basically the major points of the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Butler, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Introduction out of order, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
Mr. President, at this time, I would like for the committee, the Senate, to help me in congratulating Ms. Laney McNair, who will serve as an assistant to many of us in her new position. Let us give our hand.
Senator Jordan, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question.
Question, Senator?
Of course.
Please
Yes.
proceed,
Yes.
Senator Jordan.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Is Whitfield open for mental health, fully open again? The state hospital?
As far as I know, it is, yes.
It is? What about these, we getting enough money for regionals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are throughout the state? I know they are suffering from money. I've had them, I've met with them, and they don't have enough resources to house.
Right. And through the ARPA funds, we've actually put a significant amount in the ARPA funding for those community-based mental health services. An increase of 60 beds for the crisis stabilization units across the state, and that's where most of the complaints come from the counties, that they don't have enough beds when they have somebody come in that's in acute need of stabilization. So that's one area that the ARPA funds have been set aside for, is for community-based mental health.
So hospitals don't have to house them like they once did?
Well, right now, wherever they can put them is kind of where they're putting them if they don't have a bed. But, you know, some counties don't run out of beds, some counties do, so that's kind of what the Department of Mental Health has looked at, is to try to kind of even that out and give some more options for placement through the crisis stabilization unit, increased beds.
How much more resources have you put in it compared to what we did last year, or the last time we were able to do some? How much more money have been put into mental health?
I have to ask Senator Polk the total of the ARPA funds, but the increase in this budget from this year over last year is almost $5 million.
$5 million. And that's where you got those 60 beds you
No,
indicated?
those 60 beds are coming from separate funds, from the American Rescue and Recovery Plan funds. These funds that we increased this year were for health increase, health insurance increase, salary increase, the 3% on some of the salaries, and for the forensic unit at the state hospital.
Yes. But finally, I know these original mental health centers have been suffering for resources, and this will help them some.
Yeah, and I mean, we've added, $3 million to community-based mental health out of this budget, plus what's added in the ARPA budget that Senator Polk's handled.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. If there are no other questions, I'd ask for passage on the morning roll call.
Senator's requested use of the morning roll call. Anyone object to procedure? When wish to be recorded as voting no. No. Present. Seeing none, the bill passes. We go to one page over, please.
As we go to
Senator
item
Hobson
47. and have
is
the title read.
recognized for number 47 on the calendar, please. Okay, Senator, we're recognized.
Ask the title be read, please.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3048, Appropriation, Development Authority, Mississippi.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Total action on MDA is $103,402,023, of which $20,483,373 is general funds. I wanted to pull this bill for two reasons. One is, you remember we put some money in for site development grants last year, and we're going to reappropriate some of those funds that have not been used. I want to really build that. I'd like to see that fund built up. I mean, this is preliminary, but I just want to bring it to your attention so we can start working on having not even shovel-ready, but ready projects for economic developers in Mississippi. So that's something that we hope to come back to later in the session. And also, another important point here is we're going to move, or at least we're attempting to move this year, the GCRF projects out of MDA and just have a separate standalone bill. That's, most of you that have dealt with that know that that's sometimes is a hang-up for MDA. So I'd like to move the GCRF projects into a separate bill, which we'll take up individually. That's an explanation of the bill. I'll be happy to yield to questions. If there are none, I move adoption by use of morning roll call.
Questions? Questions? Seeing none, the Senator has requested use of the morning roll call. Anyone object to procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no. No. No Sojourner. No McDaniel. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, bill passes 48. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask that the title be read on Senate Bill 3049.
Please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3049, Appropriation, Gulf Coast Restoration Funds to the Mississippi Development Authority.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the bill that I just referenced, the GCRF bill, which we'll use as the vehicle to do our GCRF projects, and it's got the projects that we previously done and the money that can be spent on those. Yield for any questions. If there are none, I move adoption by use of morning roll call.
Questions on the bill? Senator Wiggins, for what purpose you seek recognition?
To, after the vote, Mr. President, be asked unanimous consent to be added as a co-author.
Okay.
And also to the vote for Senator Carter.
Okay, one moment, please. Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no. Present? Carter? Present. Okay, we'll go co-sponsors. Wiggins, Delano. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Mr. Clerk, will you make the two additions and present for Senator Carter? No votes. Number 49, sir.
I ask that the title be read on Senate Bill 3050.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3050, Appropriation, Department of Tourism.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the vehicle that will be utilized. There's no money in the budget right now, but this is the vehicle that will be utilized if the Mississippi Department of Tourism is set up as such. I'll yield for questions. If there are none, I move adoption by use of the morning roll.
Questions? Questions? Seeing none. Houston, morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Senator Jordan, for what purpose?
I have a question.
You have a question. Senator Hobson, will you yield for a question?
I'll yield.
Senator Jordan is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what will tourism do now? Will they still be on the MDA until, how will they receive their resources in order to?
They would receive them through this separate bill. We would have a separate agency bill, so it would be in standalone. It wouldn't go through MDA anymore. It goes directly to the Mississippi Department of Tourism.
Oh, and that department has it been established as yet?
Not yet, but it might be established, and if it is, we need a vehicle, an appropriations vehicle to be able to fund it. So that's what.
So they can still use the resources that you got there before you establish the
Right.
department?
Right. This is just what we're just passing or attempting to pass is the appropriations vehicle that they will utilize that we'd put money into for them to operate. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Senator Jordan.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? Use of morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to procedure? Should record as voting no. McDaniel, no. Sojourner, no. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, the bill passes with 2 negative votes. 54, please, sir. We're on
Thank you.
54, Mr.
I ask that we go to Senate Bill 3055 and have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 3055, Appropriation, Additional Appropriations for Various State Agencies.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is our deficit bill that we're taking up, and I want to go through the items. A couple of things yesterday in committee that I had off on the worksheet, but let me make sure we're clear today on what's included in this bill. This is $400,000 that will go to pay on the Olivia Y settlement at the Attorney General's office, or not settlement, but the fees and expenses related to that lawsuit. There's $21,452. It's going to be utilized for cleanup at the ChemFax Superfund site located in Harrison County. There's $211,616. That's an estimate of the amount of funds that'll need to be utilized to pay off settlement and attorney's fees in a case of Pickett versus Mississippi Board of Animal Health. There is a settlement payment to lawsuits been settled by the Department of Corrections with IHS Pharmacy. That's $625,000. There are 3 inmate wrongfully incarcerated funds at $50,000 apiece. There's a payment to the attorneys that are handling the lawsuits. There are 2 lawsuits pending against on the Department of Corrections, and that amount is $300,000. There is $100,000 to be paid to experts in the Dobbs case that is pending before the Supreme Court. There's $200,000 paid to Phelps Dunbar on the lawsuit related to mental health that's pending right now in the federal courts. In addition, additionally, $75,000 is owed to the special master, Dr. Hogan, who is the monitor set up by the court. We've got DFA has to fund the non-entitlement units. Y'all may remember that. We funded them through the ARPA funds. They need the authority to spend those $8,046,958. We got $606,242 of capital expense funds that will go to the MISWIN system to pay for tower contract leases. $25,000 in expenses, legal expenses for the Joint Reapportionment Committee, or for the ACLU suit against the Joint Reapportionment Committee related to the congressional redistricting. There is the VOCA funds that I mentioned in committee yesterday. These are the Victims of Crime Act funds that are paid through federal grants due to prosecutions and other court cases, fines as it relates to domestic abuse and other victims of crimes. Y'all may know, we talked about this in committee yesterday, but because of the COVID, we've had a lot fewer prosecutions and fines that have taken place, so that fund is significantly down. It's gone down from $23,449,000 to $13,924,000. So we would intend to fund the victims of crime at $9,852,684 out of capital expense funds. And the bad news about that for us is that it's probably an expectation they're still going to be behind a little bit next year too. So we may be looking at this again for another year, but we felt it was best to fund for those victims of crime out of the capital expense funds that we have. Additionally, there is language that follows that directs them to seek Medicaid, child welfare funds, and any other federal program that they can get money from. So making sure that they've got the authority to go get from any of the federal sources that may be available to help the victims of crime. There's $3.5 million in spending a special fund authority out of the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund for student financial aid to assist college students who may have fallen behind during the pandemic. And then the final measure is the authority, as I mentioned earlier, I think in one of the questions about Medicaid, that we're going to authorize them to utilize special funds in the amount of $466,786,240 for mandated Medicaid medical services. And this bill is effective from and after passage too. I'll yield for questions, Mr. President.
Questions on the bill. Senator Blunt, for what purpose you seek recognition?
I'd like to speak on the bill, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. We'll have 2 or 3 more questions. Senator Simmons, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Question, Mr. President.
Will you yield for a question, Senator?
I yield.
Please proceed, Senator Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chairman Hobson, for yielding. Could you speak a little more about the $466 million that you mentioned about the Medicaid mandated services?
Sure. That is Section 9. That's the Division of Medicaid using their federal funds to pay for Medicaid services, giving them the authority to utilize the funds. This is giving them authority to utilize funds that they have.
So they already have the money, but this is just the authority to allow them to use the money that they will be receiving from the federal government?
Yes. And this is the letter I received a few days ago from the director, Drew Snyder, requesting that authority.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wiggins, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Question.
Will you, Senator? Please proceed, Senator Wiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sorry I had to step out yesterday during committee, and I appreciate the work on the VOCA, so that's my question. So anybody, I guess let me put it this way, any entity that was receiving the VOCA funds are going to be able to receive the funds under this provision, under this appropriation bill, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And there were quite a number of those, right, throughout the state?
It's a big number. It's a big amount, but we're covering for the lack of the prosecutions that have taken place. And as I understand it and appreciate it, and we'll see next year, but as I appreciate it, this may take a little while to get caught back up.
And honestly, I tried to find out, but I haven't gotten a good answer. Do we know why those got cut, or that to the point where we're having to use capital expense funds to, I guess, provide a deficit?
Yes, because they're not prosecuting, because they're not prosecuting the criminals. They haven't been able to as much as they usually have. It's always been, you never know what it's going to be exactly, but because of COVID, they're well behind on the prosecutions and the fines for these criminals, and it goes into a fund to pay restitution to the victims, and they just don't have the money to pay it right now.
The VOCA funds.
So yeah, the VOCA funds.
And just on a specific one there, and you're probably familiar with it, CASA, which is court-appointed special advocates, who've received those funds? I assume they're going to be able to access that?
Yes, the CASAs, there are various CASAs that we have in the state, like Hancock, Harrison, Jackson, Lafayette. Yes, they can access them is the short answer. And, we've got an actual individual breakdown of what each area is short on funds for victims. And so in Jackson County, for instance, you're $56,281 below. Without these funds, that's how much you'd be below on paying those victims their restitution.
Yeah, I saw Corbin hand you that, so thank you to Corbin for that breakdown. But no, I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, for working on this. This is a valuable asset, so thank you for finding those funds to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Seymour, for what purpose, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
Do you for a question, Senator?
I yield.
Senator Seymour, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any of these expenses being appropriated dealing with a lawsuit between the governor and the speaker?
Not this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Seymour. Senator Sojourner, for what purpose, ma'am?
Question, Mr.
Are you here for
President.
a question, Senator?
I yield.
Please proceed, Senator Sojourner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick, what's the total amount that we are not giving authority to, but what's the total amount of dollars associated with the bill?
In this bill,
And I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize.
let me find, hang on one second. Total amount we've got it broken in two categories: capital expense funds, $12,566,994, and then special funds, which are typically like Medicaid is the bulk of it, the federal funds that they've got. They just need the authority to spend them.
Right.
It's $478,333,198.
So the actual state funds would be the 12 million part?
That's, yes. Capital expense funds, yeah. It's not general funds, but it is.
But it's
money
right,
we've got
right.
in our capital expense account.
Of which 3.5 is an additional student financial aid funding, separate from what we've
But
already
that's-
passed, right?
Yes, that's separate. That's special funds too. So that's not state. what I would-
Okay. And then one other quick question. What is or who is the Jackson Women's Health Organization? I know they were listed somewhere.
That's the group that runs the clinic up on, I think that's the group that runs the clinic on State Street, or whatever street that's on up in Fondren.
Okay.
That's the lawsuit, the abortion lawsuit that's pending before the Supreme Court.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions? Other questions, Senator Hobson? Seeing
If none, I
none,
move
Senator
adoption.
Reddy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Blunt wanted to speak on the
Yeah,
bill.
he wants, Senator Blunt, you're recognized to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. As always, I appreciate your good work. This is the last general fund bill that comes before us this morning, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the general fund and where we are specifically with regard to this proposal, this reckless and irresponsible proposal that's been sent to us by the House. Now, we don't always get it right in here, but I think we deserve a lot of credit for these deadlines. We have are real deadlines. We finish on time, and we balance the budget. Now, things don't always work out the way I want them to do, but we do that. And that requires the revenue side and the spending side working together. This is not Washington, D.C., where you can cut taxes and increase spending. Senator Harkins can't pass reckless tax cuts because Senator Hobson's committee won't have any money to spend. And Senator Hobson's committee can't radically increase spending unless Senator Harkins' committee can generate the money to pay those bills, because we're going to balance the budget. And the budget that's been put forward to you today from Senator Hobson is a balanced budget. That's the difference between state government and federal government. And I used to travel around the state when I was chair of public property, and we would go meet with community colleges, we would meet with IHL. All of us go meet with our constituents. We meet with our troopers. We meet with folks who work at state hospital. We meet with agencies all the time. and we say, we help you, we want to help more, we want to do more. We wish we could do more. We wish we could help you with pay raises. We wish we could help you with staff. We know you're losing people. We want to help. We're doing the best we can, but we got to balance the budget. That's true. It requires making tough decisions. We do have to balance the budget, and we can't do everything that we wish we could do. But the proposal from the House would eliminate 1/3 of the general fund budget that we just voted on this morning, $2 billion, which is what the income tax generates each year. It raises taxes on sales tax. So if you're on a fixed income and you don't pay income tax, you could potentially be looking at a tax increase, particularly if you're on a fixed income. If you support the work of all these agencies on this sheet, then if you want to do for them what they need done, and you heard the chairman say, this is a very conservative, responsible budget. This is essentially level funding, the state personnel board plan, the teacher pay raise, and paying for insurance. Otherwise, it is a conservative level funding budget with the money that we have right now. And at the same time, we are benefiting from the American Rescue Plan. We appreciate Congressman Thompson's support of that and sending us $1.8 billion to deal with the deferred issues that we've had. You see that Senator Polk's committee, I think, has allocated that wisely. These are building issues, lawsuit issues, stuff that had to be dealt with. And thanks to that federal legislation, we're going to deal with it. But we're experiencing, even with this lean budget, we know that the state is having to put less money into the Medicaid budget because we're not having to match as much. We're also moving forward. You remember with the 87 highway program, we put money into it to build highways, but we didn't put any money to maintain those highways. We're going to have to take care of all this ARPA spending that we're doing right now. Now, the money that goes to local water systems, that's going to be on them, and that's as it should be. But a lot of this is going into state buildings, it's going into state roads, it's going into projects at universities and community colleges, and somebody's going to have to maintain those things. Someone's going to have to oversee this. Someone at MDOT is going to have to work on all this money. The LBR recommendation for MDOT calls for them to get less money next year than they got last year. The budget that is before you right now calls for less money in the general fund for FY23 than FY22 for Department of Public Safety, for the military department, for DEQ, who's going to have to administer all this water money that we're sending out, at least under the Senate plan, less money for parks, less money for community college, IHL corrections in general funds than they got in general funds last year. That's in the sheet. If you want to do the things that we need to do and not raise taxes, you have to protect the general fund. We have to balance the budget. The tax cuts that we passed in 2016 haven't even fully phased in yet. If this legislature goes home and passes no tax cut at all, you will cut $200 billion in taxes over the next 5 years. If we do nothing, you will cut $200 million in taxes over the next 5 years through the continued phase-in of that 2016 tax cut. What I see out of the Senate is we're trying to be responsible. We're trying to balance the budget. We are not going to raise taxes. We're going to try to meet the needs as best we can. And we're not going to phase in a tax cut that really kicks in until after the next election, which is going to reduce this amount of this bare bones budget that just does the basic things that Senator Hobson just outlined by between $500 million and $1 billion a year, as the House plan would do. This has got to be a time where we look at this general fund budget and realize that we balance it. Because when we go to our constituents in these agencies and all these people who depend on us to fund these things, the folks over there who voted for that tax cut, they cannot say, I wish we could do more. I really wish we could help you. I wish we could do more financial aid. I wish we could do more roads. I wish we could do more for the military department and Department of Public Safety and the crime lab where the backlog is and all that. I wish we could do all that. No, you don't. You had to make a choice. You had to make a choice between funding the general fund to do those things or voting for a tax cut. And you made your choice. This proposal is going to come up on our side soon, and I think we're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to deal with it in a responsible way, in a state government way that recognizes we're going to balance the budget. You know, we have a joint rule that says if you're going to come and increase any of these budgets, you've got to show where the money is coming from. That's fair. We need a joint rule that says if you're going to cut the revenue of the general fund, you need to show me where the cut's going to be. That's the exact same logic. If you're going to wipe out the general fund with this House bill, you're going to have to show me what on this list you're going to cut. Because even the bill that's before you now, the bills that are before you now, will reduce general fund funding for all the agencies I just named over what they got last year. We all know that we're in a COVID economy. We all know that the help we've gotten from the federal government and the $1.8 billion that Senator Polk's committee is spending, it's not coming back. The federal government is not going to be sending people checks every year as these tax cuts are phased in. That's over. The time to be making radical changes to tax policy, and that's exactly what that House plan is not when we're in the middle of a COVID bubble. I mean, my first year here was 2008 when Senator Hobson and I came the first year, and we all know what happened in the national economy in 2008. Senator Hobson, Senator McDaniel, and our last members who were here in 2008 when the national economy just tanked. And in 2008, in 2009, Governor Barbour had to make $667 million in mid-year cuts in 2 years because the revenue wasn't coming in. Before that, Governor Musgrove had to make $243 million in cuts, in mid-year cuts, because the revenue wasn't coming in 2000 and 2001. And just a few years ago, under Governor Bryant in his second term, Governor Bryant was forced to make $233 million in mid-year cuts because the revenue wasn't going to come in. Don't we know that that's going to happen again? Don't we know that this is a one-time COVID bubble? The things that we do here in the general fund are vital. The things that are being funded through this ARPA money have been long neglected. We're going to get out of lawsuits. We're going to be able to do things at Parchman, at our colleges. All these things have been long neglected, and thankfully now we have one-time money. And again, I appreciate Senator Polk's work on this because we have dedicated one-time money to one-time expenses, which is exactly what we ought to do with this money. Don't we know that this one-time money that we've received is not an excuse to eliminate recurring revenue year after year after year after year? That's what the House plan would do. And so when you vote on this budget, and I'm proud to vote on this budget, and if you're on the Finance Committee, I want you to think about what the long-term effects of that plan would do to this budget. We don't need it. We need to do what's in this budget here today and pass it and send it to the House and look at these tax cuts plans in a responsible, long-range way. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the podium.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Senator Parker, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Briefly speak on the bill.
Please proceed. One moment, Senator Hobson. We'll be right back to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll echo what Senator Blunt said. I sincerely thank Senator Hobson for his work on this budget. I'm happy to see a balanced budget. I sincerely thank Senator Harkins on the hard work he's done already in looking at a solution on the income tax issue. What I rise to talk about today, though, is more what's kind of impacted me personally in my business and how I've seen it affect this state and this legislature in a whole. And it's centered around running a business. And many of us in here run a business, and I'm going to say that this year we've had a very unique year, one unlike one I've ever experienced before. I'm fortunate to employ about 26 people, and this past year, every single one of those 26 people got a pay raise. They got a pay raise because we have less and less people who are looking for a job. The job market has increased, which is a good thing. But when that happens, we have to sometimes look and we have to deal with the consequences of that. One of the consequences is that it would surprise you that even in giving every employee that I employ a raise, we still lost about a third of them. And we have had to replace them with other people because they were able to go somewhere else and find something else to do. And so part of the discussion today, and you may be able to tell from some of my questions, deals with the fact that in Senator Hobson's budget, he has proposed some what I would call very modest pay increases for the people who work for the state. He has proposed, and our Chairman of Education has proposed an increase in the salary for our teachers. We have passed and given the supervisors an ability to increase their salary if they see that there's a need to do that. And yet, even in this time that we're at, I had to listen last week or this week to a condemnation on anyone who wants to give a salary raise to anyone in state government. I will say, as someone who served on the Rules Committee, we have looked at the salaries of not just, people in this body, but in the accessory staff who help support every one of us. And it probably doesn't surprise you that this year we've had to look hard at that and offer some modest raises to try to keep the people that we have here. I love the people who are serving in here. I love the people who are working in the building across the way from us. I got to go over to Woolfolk yesterday and meet some great people who are working over there, and I want to keep those people here. And so the reason that I rise today is to say, that we are living in different times. We have to look at things not as in absolute terms, but in people terms. And if we don't find a way to keep the people in this government, in this body, in this state that we need, they're not going to stay here. And so I appreciate the work. I appreciate the time, and I yield the podium.
All right, Senator, we're ready for your motion. We see no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that we pass 3055, Senate Bill 3055, by use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no. President McDaniel. President Sojourner. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move to item 55, Senator Hobson, Senator Pope.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay. My motion is that we take up Senate bills, or rather items 55 through 63 on today's calendar in block, and that the titles be read.
Okay, does anyone wish to remove one of the in-block items off the calendar? Anyone? Anyone? Senator Turner?
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we set aside item 61.
61. Senator Turner. Anyone? Senator Norwood?
Introduction of the resolution out of order at the appropriate time, Mr. President.
Okay, one moment. Let's finish. Anyone else want to take this off? Take one of these off. Seeing none, 61 is removed. We'll take in block. Senator Polk, you're recognized to explain. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Senator Polk.
Titles be read.
We'll go forward. Senator Polk, you're recognized. Please read the titles except for 61, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill number 3056, appropriation additional to the Environmental Quality Mississippi Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act, ARPA funds. Senate Bill number 3057, appropriation additional to accelerate Mississippi for the ARPA, Nurse Health Science Workforce Programs, ARPA funds. Senate Bill number 3058, appropriation additional to IHL, SFA for the Nurse and Allied Health Loan Repayment Program, ARPA funds. Senate Bill number 3059, appropriation additional to DFA for the COVID-19 DMO Grant Program, ARPA. Senate Bill number 3060, appropriation additional to Health Department for the COVID-19 Hospital Capacity Program and Operations, ARPA funds. Senate Bill number 3061, appropriation additional to Public Safety Department of Coronavirus Death Benefits, ARPA funds. Senate Bill number 3063, appropriation additional to Public Safety Department of for Operations, ARPA funds. Senate Bill number 3064, appropriation additional to DFA for the MAICU grant program ARPA funds.
Thank you.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask you to recognize Senator Polk to explain those
Senator
items.
Polk, you're recognized. 55, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're taking these up in block because we have discussed them so many times. You probably have them memorized better than I, and you were probably handed out, or should have been handed out, a page earlier today that has each Senate bill with the appropriation we're asking for to be approved. You can see that we are now approving the funds that we discussed previously, and in some instances, we even passed general bills to take care of the legal things that need to be done before we make the appropriation. Also, you will see on this sheet, just for information, that we had 4 bills that we have already appropriated funds to. That's Child Protection Services, MEMA, Mississippi National Guard, and Mental Health. So if there are no questions, I move for the passage of the morning roll call.
Questions on the bill. Senator Bryan, for what purpose?
The question.
Will you, Senator?
I do.
Senator Bryan, you're recognized.
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I know that you have worked long and hard on this, and I appreciate your work. I guess my question is, don't you agree with me?
Actually, Senator, I agree that I've worked hard, but I will agree further that I had a lot of help from a committee that put a lot of time in, and I'm very much pleased with them.
I noticed that we're spending a great deal of money on water and sewer projects. And of course, as you know from our discussions, I'm very much in support of that. Wouldn't you agree that as you go across the state, almost every city has some pipes that need to be replaced, and in a large number of cities, there are a large number of pipes well over 100 years old?
I have heard that. That is true, and I won't disagree.
And so if we doubled the amount of money that's in this proposition, it's $750 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. But if we spent $1.5 billion, you still would have plenty of work to be done on water and sewer around the state. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. I would.
Yeah, thank you.
Senator Butler, for what purpose, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
You're a senator.
I do.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Polk, and thanks so much for the hard work you've done on this bill. Now, these are probably going to conference, correct?
We do not have reverse repealers in them, but I would think when they get to the House, there will be discussion there, and most probably will end up in conference.
Okay, and that will be my next question. So, do you know that, do they have a plan on how to use this money?
I understand that they have been passing bills. I have not seen a complete plan like our committee has put forth.
Okay, so we don't know kind of what their direction is versus our direction.
That's correct.
So, okay, so what would be, so this is the Senate plan, of course. So once if we go to conference, then we'll decide on how, and one thing in particular I'm concerned about, Senator Polk, and I may have mentioned that to you, on that dollar for dollar match on these sewer and water projects, especially in the area of the state that I live in, Southwest Mississippi. And I've heard that the speaker, he does not agree with the dollar for dollar match. Now, again, I know that this is the Senate plan, and I understand that, but I hope that we be able to work with the House to maybe drop that fee down some to help the folks that I represent. And I hope that you will understand how important that is, not just for me, but just for a lot of your colleagues here in the Senate.
Senator, I agree that we don't know really what the House is going to do. As subcommittee chair, I reached out to the people that I was told were going to present their plan and prepare their plan, and I never got them to respond to me. And I certainly haven't had any discussions with the speaker. He has not come to me, or I've not gone to him to see exactly what his plan is. So yes, I think there will be a lot of negotiation. The one thing we did do as a committee was to try to make sure that everybody in this infrastructure bill had an opportunity to get funds that would be significant to them. That means that a lot of projects won't be fully funded.
Right.
But many projects will get some funding, and that was the intent.
Thank you, Senator Polk. Thank you, Mr. President.
Passage on the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no? Present? Seeing none, all of the bills except 61, and we're going to go back to that. It is not anticipated by the chair that we will be necessary to be here tomorrow. So therefore, when we finish today, we will be adjourning until Monday. And we're going to turn the podium over to Senator Kirby.
We're not coming tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hobson, item 61.
Item 61, I ask that the title be read.
Please read the title.
Senate Bill number 3062, appropriation additional for DFA Bureau of Building ARPA funds.
Make the usual motion.
Senator Hobson makes the usual motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask you recognize Senator Polk to explain the bill.
Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the bill that the funding goes to DFA to take care of the state buildings and also those on the university colleges, campuses, university and college campuses, and community college campuses. The DFA funds will be spent at corrections. As you can see, it's a pretty hefty amount, and the reason for that is there's a lot of work to do. So if there are no questions, I'd like to use passage of the morning roll call.
Yeah, you asked for use of morning roll call. Do we have any questions? Senator Turner Ford, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. President.
You yield Senator Turner Ford for a question?
I do.
Senator Turner Ford, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to look at Section 7 of the bill.
Okay.
Which refers to it lists the amounts that the community colleges are to receive.
Correct.
And I understand that there's been a process where requests were submitted and the subcommittee vetted those requests. Can you provide us any insight on how the amounts that each community college was designated to receive?
You know, our community colleges are very important to the local communities they're in, and usually there's 4, 5, 6 counties that are involved. When you have that, and as powerful and important as our community colleges are, sometimes I'm afraid politics gets involved. And so what we did as a committee was to keep politics as far away as we could. We're depending on the Bureau of Buildings at DFA to make the recommendations that you see here.
Was there any type of process where the recommendations were submitted by the Bureau of Buildings? Were they explored? Were there questions that were asked of the Bureau?
Or of the Bureau itself. I met with DFA and the Bureau of Buildings Director at length, discussing the different ways that they have determined that these were necessary spending funds. They had a plan. It was fair in my mind that everyone was going to get the things that they most needed, and the best formula that we could use to see that it was done.
Was there a formula in particular that was used?
Not a particular formula, no.
And
a lot of things were added up.
And so I would just have to say, as I look at the list, some of the community colleges that are in my area, and I would say close there too, seem to be receiving smaller amounts of funds. Mm-hmm. And specifically, I'm concerned most about East Mississippi Community College.
I see that.
And if I look at also, I think it's Meridian Community College, both of those schools are slated to receive $1 million. Do we know what the program requests were or was for East Mississippi Community College?
When you say we know, I would say the Bureau of Buildings certainly knows. I don't, you may, but I don't have a particular for each project on each campus.
And should we give consideration to the amount of, I would say, the millage or the contributions that those schools receive from their local counties in determining what they should receive?
We did not consider that because that would have become political in some instances because some counties and districts give more than others.
Is that a function of politics or a function of available resources?
I think it's more of what a community sees as necessary in their education. And if they are behind education and want a good education for their students, I think you will see a higher instance of participation in funding.
But couldn't a portion of what the community college received be a function of industry, population, growth, decline?
I certainly wouldn't say that it couldn't be some of that.
It's not necessarily a matter of neglect that a community college receives X amount of dollars from their region, is it?
Say that again.
It wouldn't necessarily be a matter of neglect if a community college in a particular area receives less than one would, let's say, on the Gulf Coast.
I would hope not.
Do the community colleges in the Gulf Coast area, do they have access to the BP funds that are still being deposited?
That's getting out of my pay grade. I'm not sure.
I'd like to be recognized for an amendment at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Senator McClendon, do you have a question?
Introduction out of order, Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the Senate is here for lunch today, I would like to introduce in the North Gallery the mayor from the city of Hernando, Mr. Chip Johnson. Thank you for being here, Mr. Mayor.
Senator Hickman, do you have a question?
Yes, question, Mr. President.
Do you yield to Senator Hickman for a question?
Yes.
Senator Hickman, you're recognized.
Senator Polk, as with the committee, I think my questions are coming from the same section that Senator Turner Ford had her questions from. And just to follow up on committee, I do understand what the process you used was what was submitted by the Bureau of Buildings, DFA. So do you know what factors in particular that they use to come up with these numbers that we see?
No, I do not.
And
excuse me, the director, of course, is an engineer. And when they start talking engineerese, I get as confused as when you lawyers start talking lawyerese. So I'm not sure exactly what their process was, but I would have to assume it was a very methodical process.
Okay. And did they provide any kind of written report, or were these all verbal during the meetings?
We have a report of what they requested for everyone and what that project would be.
But we don't have a report on what their methodology was for getting this. Okay, and so is it possible they could provide us with some methodology that they use for the numbers that we have?
I'm sure they would be glad to meet with you and explain it to you.
Okay. In due time, I would definitely like for that to happen because, as with Senator Turner Ford, I think most, if not all, of our East Mississippi community colleges are on the low portion of the list. And not to say that we don't trust the committee or what they've done, but we want to make sure that we're able to access this data to make sure that it was properly administered. And finally, I think you said in the meeting that part of that was based on what that particular community college had need of. And how did they determine need?
And that's, again, what you would need to speak with the director.
All right. Thank you, Senator Polk.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Sparks, do you have a question?
A question, Mr. President.
Senator Poe, do you yield to Senator Sparks for a question? He nodded yes. Senator Sparks.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Pope. I'm going to go to Section 7 as well with the community colleges. I have the unique privilege to represent in one Senate district out of 52 the home campuses of 2 of our 15 community colleges. So the disparity in the amounts is directly effective to my district. One of my community colleges received $1 million and one received $3.25 million. I understand thus far that these are projects that were submitted by the colleges. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
They were submitted by the colleges, and also Bureau of Buildings already had a list, some of the needs.
Okay, so these are things that the colleges all had an opportunity to participate in what they put forth as their request.
Yes.
Okay. And the Bureau of Buildings made these determinations. You're not sure the methodology, but ultimately this is the number, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And of course, this is our bill. If we send it to the other end, it may stay the same, it may not.
I would guess it would not.
All right. Are these projects, if you know, were these ARPA restricted approved projects?
All the projects, according to Bureau of Buildings, are approved for ARPA funds.
Okay. And I think this is going to be a recurring theme for this year and maybe the next few years. Our local people are elected at the municipal level, and they're empowered to make decisions for their municipalities. And they received ARPA money. And you just talked about a bill that may have match funds. Sure. Our supervisors are elected on the local level, and they're autonomous from their legislators, and they make decisions with ARPA monies. Sure. Our community colleges made these requests of their own volition. I think whatever methodology is used, it is incumbent that we put forth the best projects possible to be transformational. And if we don't, we may end up on the short end of the stick. Is that a pretty good evaluation?
That's a fair assumption.
Okay, so I hope that we can do that. I certainly want to know how one of my community colleges appears to be more successful than the other in obtaining these funds. But my final question would be this. If this bill happened to pass as written, whatever project they requested would be the only use of the monies they were granted. Is that correct? They couldn't take this money and spend it on something different than the request they made to DFA.
Building a Bureau of Buildings will get the funds, and they will see that they're spent in that manner.
Okay, they can't change, the community college couldn't change the purpose of the funds. Whatever they requested is the project they're going to have to do, or they're not going to get the money.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Before, we have maybe another question or two, but before we do that, I think we have an amendment, and that may change the line of questioning. So Senator Turner, forward. Do you have an amendment? You have a copy of the amendment? Okay. It's on the screen. Okay, thank you. Senator Ford.
Thank you, Mr. President. Instead of itemizing a specific amount that I would like to request for my community college, I think that there are other members of the body who have, I would say, take issue with the figures that have been identified in the bill. And this is not to disrupt or to obstruct the work of the Appropriations Subcommittee that has been chaired by Senator Polk. But I have recently received a call that there are some issues that we believe that can be adequately addressed with the ARPA funds. And so in support of the request for a reverse repealer, please understand that we will reach out to Senator Polk and the members of the committee to try to get, I think, a formula or designation that might be more acceptable to the members of the body, to the extent possible. So to that extent, I would move that you all would adopt the amendment for a reverse repealer, and I ask that it be done by use of the morning roll call.
It would be a floor vote? 6 or more to stand, Senator? with 6 more to stand.
I just move adoption. Morning roll call, I think is what I requested. Is it not? I just move adoption.
Our use of morning roll call has been suggested. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it. The amendment is passed.
Thank you.
So, now no more questions. So, we'd like to close. Senator Polk.
I'll just say we'd like to use passage morning roll call.
Senator moves the use of morning roll call, final passage. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anyone object to this procedure? Now, all in favor say aye. Yeah. Anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please use morning roll call, final passage. Thank you, Senator Polk. Now, Senator Polk, I'd like to recognize you again for a motion. Yeah, okay. Senator, we're going to pass on local and private, right? Okay, and that's it. Yeah, I got that. All right, now for announcements. I wanted to let everyone know that we're going to be leaving and not coming back until Monday. And I understand there's some severe weather out there. You might want to check it before you're going home. So announcements, any announcements? Seeing none, Senator Polk. Whoa, we got an announcement. I'm sorry. When I looked the first time, it wasn't any. I'm sorry. Senator Blunt first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request unanimous consent to be added as a co-author to items number 55 through 63 on today's calendar.
Motion to reconsider, you said, join the author. Senator Harkins.
Co-author.
The co-author.
Co-author, not motion.
I'm sorry, I thought you wanted to join.
Not motion.
Okay, I'm all messed up today. Okay. No objection be named. All right, now, Senator Harkins. I'm in too big a hurry here. Senator Harkins, you recognize.
Finance won't meet today.
Finance will not meet today.
Finance will not meet. Okay, Senator Younger.
Adjourn in memory, please, for some good friends of mine who died of COVID, I believe. Michael Kirby and Peggy Kennedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Younger. Senator McCon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call a forestry meeting on Monday, 5 minutes after recess. That should be our final meeting for all bills, and then the only thing left will be nominations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be no appropriations meeting today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Senator Blunt.
For an adjourned memory, Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. When the Senate adjourns today, I would ask that we do so in memory of William Gilbert. Mr. Gilbert was the father of the former Secretary of the Senate, John Gilbert. He passed away on the 5th of this month, and I ask that we adjourn in his memory today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Norwood. Okay. You introduced a resolution out of order. Please read the resolution.
A resolution recognizing judicial service of Hinds County Chancellor Denise Sweet Owens on the occasion of her retirement.
Thank you. Okay. Any other announcements? If not, then Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in recess until 5 p.m. today, at which time the Journal will reflect that we are adjourned until 4 p.m. Monday.
Senator Polk moves to stand in recess until 5 p.m. today, at which time the Senate Journal will reflect we stand adjourned until 4 p.m. Monday. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. As the ayes have it, we stand in recess.
I'm sorry, man. My alarm went off and I can't find out. Good job, Senator.